Hello team, welcome to another ATP Geopolitics video with myself, Jonathan M.S. Pierce. This is a US political update where I'm going to be mainly concerning myself with the Jimmy Kimmel fallout concerning his cancellation from Disney and that being brought about by the FCC chairman, Brendan Carr, really. I'm going to talk about freedom of speech and a whole bunch of other things around the side and a few other tagged on bits of US political analysis and commentary at the end of the video. We're going to start though, not quite with the Jimmy Kimmel cancellation, but this, I almost did a breaking news update just on this last night, but it was a Saturday night and I was tired. Donald Trump appears to have released a private message to Pam Bondi, his Attorney General, on Truth Social, and then later deleted it. And then he was questioned on it because this is a bit weird. Typical for Donald Trump, it's just chaos, isn't it? Anyway, Pam, I have reviewed, straight away, he starts off this public Truth Social message with the word Pam, : Pam, I'm talking to you about this, so obviously this is a private message. I have reviewed over 30 statements and posts saying that essentially, quote, same old story as last time, all talk, no action. Nothing is being done. What about Comey, Adam Shifty Schiff, Letitia? They're all guilty as hell, but nothing is going to be done. So that's his 30 statements saying something like that. So he's reviewed 30 statements saying that there is no action on these people I want you to go and get. So there's a private message to his Attorney General effectively saying, I want you to go and get my political enemies, i.e. Comey, Adam Schiff, Letitia James. So a New York Attorney General, Comey that used to be his, actually, was it FBI guy, and then Adam Schiff, obviously Democrat politician. Then we almost put in a Democrat-supported US attorney in Virginia with a really bad Republican past, a woke rhino being a Republican in name only, so accusation of these Republicans who aren't really Republican. It's all kind of a no true Scotsman fallacy, of course, who was never going to do his job. That's why two of the worst Dem senators pushed him so hard. He even lied to the media and said he quit and that we had no case. No, I fired him. And there is a great case, and many lawyers and legal pundits say so. So this is against Letitia James trying to find evidence on mortgage fraud. None was found, refused to take her to court, and then was subsequently fired by Donald Trump for not taking someone to court. Because they must be taken to court. Yeah, but there's no evidence. Yeah, no, take them to court. We don't believe in evidence here. It's not about evidence. It's about political enemies, and I want you to take out my political enemies. And this is the very lawfare that many Republicans have long been complaining that the Democrats do, but it's, of course, projection. Lindsay is a really good lawyer. So this is the new lawyer to replace... in fact, my goodness, I think I've got something on her later. So this is the lawyer. Yeah. No. So breaking news. Trump has tapped a new top professional prosecutor in the Eastern District of Virginia after firing US Eric Seibert after he refused to prosecute Letitia James. Who did he hire? A January the 6th protester and conspiracy theorist Mary Maggie Cleary. Yes, this is fascism. So I don't know. For the record, Cleary says she was never at the January 6th protest, although early reports indicated that she was. So I don't know who this Lindsay is. But anyway, Lindsay is a really good lawyer and likes you a lot. We can't delay any longer. It's killing our reputation and credibility. So let's repeat that. We can't delay any longer. It's killing our reputation and credibility. So the understanding that their reputation credibility is under threat. So you need to go and find dirt on Comey, Schiff, and Letitia, and we need to do lawfare. They impeached me twice and indicted me 5 times over nothing. Justice must be served now, President DJT. So that appears to be a private message. It was then deleted. It keeps getting more insane, says Richard Hanania. Trump apparently tried to send a direct message to Pam Bondi, essentially telling her that his enemies need to be prosecuted. Instead, he posted it on Truth Social, and now it's been deleted. He was then challenged on this last night at a live event, and this was his response. fact, I'm going to read it out to you because, as ever, he seems to be being interviewed standing under a jet engine. Are you criticising Pam Bondi for not going after your political adversaries? No. I just want people to act. They have to act, and we want to act fast. If they are guilty or if they should be charged, they should be charged. We have to do it now. So no talk about admitting that he's using lawfare to go after his political enemies. It's just, no, I just want to act fast, etc., etc. Okay. So that's just the kind of precursor to the sort of stuff we're going to be talking about. Now, we're going to go on to Jimmy Kimmel getting cancelled. It's worth noting that NBC News has reported that of the Justice Department, no evidence is found yet of ties between Charlie Kirk's shooting and left-wing groups, officials say. 3 people familiar with the federal probe into Kirk's assassination told NBC News that investigators have yet to find a link between the alleged shooter and left-wing groups. At the end of the video, I'm just going to reference this amazing analysis by the Behavioral Arts. It's a guy that does facial and bodily behavioral analysis and also looks into writing and whatnot, looking at Tyler Robinson's responses to the charges and whatnot and what it tells you. Absolutely fascinating video. Really, really worth watching. I put it as a post on my YouTube channel, so I think you should go and watch the whole of this. And the last bit on the text chain between him and his roommate or romantically involved roommate is also really fascinating, showing that something funky is going on here. And I think you'd be hard pressed to deny that, because the wording is weird, and also his responses in the videos of Tyler Robinson's responses there are also shown to be somewhat problematic, because it appears that there is either some doctored footage or some weird lagged footage. So where he's nodding in one bit of footage from, say, ABC is different from another news news site's footage of the same thing, but he's nodding in a slightly different point. And one looks like he's then agreeing that he committed a murder due to political ideology, and one he's just admitting, or he's nodding to the fact that he's been charged for blah, 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 blah. And that nod is in a different place in the 2 bits of footage. I mean, it's literally, there's not conspiracy theory, as in that is the truth. So that is there to be seen. So then the question is, why is it in some areas the nod seems to be in a different place? And that would be interpreted as an admission that he did it out of political ideology. So you got to watch it. It's really, really good. Okay. So that's happened. The other thing I want to remind people of is this. So this is just a sign of the amount of disinformation that's going around, and coming from top people like Elon Musk here. Amuse is a right-wing political source on Twitter, but being platformed literally and also, megaphoned by Elon Musk himself. So Van Spilter was the Christian nationalist, Trump-loving Republican, and we know this because he's admitted it personally, and he's admitted it in prison to the New York Post, and his best friend, straight after he was arrested, told us very clearly exactly who he was and what he believed in, right? So we know 100% who Van Spilter is in terms of being a right-wing killer of politicians, right? Here, or a politician and her husband, and injured another politician and his wife. Democratic appointee shot Minnesota state officials for voting with Republicans on immigration bill. This is not true. This was a theory that came out within the first couple of hours of finding out who he was. Then he went back and looked at him and say, he was appointed by Tim Walz, who's a governor, therefore he's a friend of Tim. No, Tim Walz appointed him. He was previously appointed in this business position, like in a business forum. He was previously appointed by the previous governor, possibly a Republican, and then that was just renewed by Tim Walz. Tim Walz, he wasn't a guy that Tim Walz particularly knew. All the people on his kill list were Democrats and abortion clinic people, blah, 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 blah. Like, this is 100% a right-wing killer of left-wing people. And yet here we've got rampant disinformation being spread by Elon Musk. Many such cases, he said. Political violence. To this day, Democrats and their willing accomplices in the drive-by media claim that Vance Luther Bulter, a Tim Walz appointee, was a far-right Republican. While he shot two Democrat legislators, they have both just voted with Republicans to deny health care benefits to illegal aliens in the state. Something Bolter was deeply upset about. The fact is, Bolter was a Democrat. No, he wasn't. And he took out this anger onto Democrats and their families who he felt had betrayed his party. This is just a lie. It's just a lie that is spouted by this source, and then that is reiterated by Elon Musk. As someone said, while living in Oklahoma in 2004, Belter was registered as a Republican. In Minnesota state document from 2019, he's listed as no party preference. Minnesota does not require voters to declare party affiliation. Friends and associates have described Belter as politically right-leaning and a conservative Republican who naturally followed Trump. His roommate stated that Belter was a Trump supporter and that he voted for Trump. Records show that he voted in the 2024 Minnesota Republican presidential primary. States do not need to vote on denying healthcare to immigrants because due to federal law, the Personal Responsibility and Work Opportunity Act in 1996, immigrants are barred from access to most federal benefits, including federal healthcare programs. Under law, undocumented immigrants may only access federal benefits that are deemed necessary to protect life or guarantee safety in dire situations. People, you need to stop believing the so-called MAGA influencers. All they do is lie to your faces. Okay, so etc., etc. And I could show you the video, as I did at the time, of his best friend saying that he's a Trump supporter, blah, 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 blah. Okay, so it's just a lie. So we've just got to be really, really careful. Okay, now we're going to go on to Charlie Kirk's shooter and Jimmy Kimmel getting cancelled. And remember, the FCC chairman, Brendan Carr, gave a threat to licensors. You can do it the easy way or the hard way. The easy way is you go and pull Jimmy Kimmel. The hard way is we make you do it. Okay, so that's what he said in a podcast with Benny Johnson, and it was definitely threats from Brendan Carr that facilitated these licenses pulling the channel, that then led to ABC and Disney pulling Jimmy Kimmel indefinitely. Now, FCC chairman Brendan Carr sports a gold Trump head lapel pin. That's who he is. Members of the Trump cabinet, along with Congress people and senators, are being instructed to wear a tribute to their inglorious convicted felon leader, says Molly Ploufkins here. Now, as cultish as this seems, I mean, you've got a guy that is basically beholden to Trump, and Trump said Kimmel's going to be next after, remember, Stephen Colbert went. So Trump said, Stephen Colbert, good, he's gone. Jimmy Kimmel will be next. And then now he said, after Kimmel had gone, he's now said Seth Meyers and Jimmy Fallon will be next. So he's just going through the people who are anti-Trump, who, as he sees, who are critical of the Trump regime, and then he's trying to get rid of them. This is in line with getting rid of his political opposition, as we've seen from lawfare. It's also FCC fare, if you like. Okay, so now on to the next part of our journey here. Okay, so now let's start getting into more of the Jimmy Kimmel stuff. More particularly, the Kimmel suspension, says Chris Murphy, the Connecticut senator, is a much bigger deal than you know. It's really about growing alliance between Trump and the companies that own America's local TV stations like Nexstar to turn local TV into Trump propaganda. Let me tell you the short story. It's chilling. In August, Nexstar announced they wanted to buy another TV station company, Tegna, but that's illegal because it would give Nexstar control of stations in nearly half the country. FCC rules prohibit one company from having that much control over local TV content. Why? Because one company shouldn't control local speech in half the country. Also, we want our local TV stations to be run by local actors to preserve local identity and prevent our culture from being soullessly flattened, which Nexstar was doing already. But good news for Nexstar. Brendan Carr, Trump's FCC chair, said he's open to unprecedented change in the rules to allow the Nexstar-Tegna merger to go through, which would be good only for filthy rich owners of both companies, which means Nexstar has to play ball. So when Carr threatened to revoke the licenses of local stations that continued to air Kimmel, at the same time he was whispering to Nexstar that he might bend the rules to approve their billion-dollar merger. Nexstar knew what to do: bend the knee. Perry Sook, the Nexstar CEO, is already worth over $500 million. This deal could make him a billionaire. If Nexstar controls local TV news content in half the country and Sook owes his fortune to Trump, then then Trump effectively controls content in half the nation. And it's not just Nexstar. Sinclair, another right-leaning group that owns local TV stations, demanded Kimmel apologize and make a donation to Charlie Kirk's organization. Guess what? Sinclair also wants the FCC to increase the ownership cap for TV stations. So here's how it would work. Nexstar and Sinclair pledge loyalty to Trump. And by the way, Sinclair already donates to the GOP. He gives them control over America's local TV, and they act as his political enforcers, silencing the critics. But if we see the scheme, we can stop it by mobilizing and speaking out. That is what is going on. Okay, now at the same time, it seems that there is nonsensical stuff. Well, it makes perfect sense if you understand that this is one big giant cult. Oklahoma, which is an interesting place anyway with regard to GOP support. A new bill has been filed. Now, this is a bill doesn't necessarily mean it's going to go through, but it's been filed in Oklahoma that says that every public university in the state must have a, quote, Charlie Kirk Memorial Plaza, because nothing says freedom of speech like demanding that institutions have memorials to people that you like. So Charlie Kirk Memorial Plaza must be in every single state university with a statue of Kirk and his family. And a quote from the filing says, square or plaza plans shall include a statue of Charlie Kirk sitting at a table with an empty seat across from him, or a statue of Charlie Kirk and his wife standing and holding their children in the arms of a central element of the square, or in their arms as a central element of the square or plaza design. Literally being dictated by the Oklahoma government if that bill was to succeed. You know, just incredible. Right, Jessica Tarlov, who is the only sensible voice, I think, on Fox News as the token liberal, here gives us an indication of what happened.
Well, the media and politicians and everyone, all the editorial boards of the nation's biggest paper, including the Wall Street Journal, that wrote Mr. Kimmel's words were only moderately offensive. We want to be clear that none of this justifies the right's resort to regulatory censorship. And the premise that Democrats are more concerned about Jimmy Kimmel than they were about the tragic assassination of Charlie Kirk is completely unfounded. Democrats said all the right things that all of us felt about, that it was tragic, that violence, political violence, has no place in our society. And we were met with, this is your fault, and we are at war. There's been this move today to rewrite the story of how Jimmy Kimmel ended up being indefinitely suspended, to absolve Brendan Carr of his role in this and the government's larger role in it. But the timeline just doesn't add up. I've heard, well, read the Hollywood Reporter and read the Wall Street Journal on this. I looked through all of it, and the common denominator is that Brendan Carr said to Benny Johnson, we can do this the easy way, or we can do this the hard way. And the affiliates, who were already freaking out about it for sure, decided then that they were going to pull it. And so ABC and Disney in general, Bob Iger, had no choice but to do it. There are some smart Republicans that are cautioning them to come back from this line. Ted Cruz, of all people.
We're going to return to some of these critics.
Who's the chair of the Commerce Committee, which actually has oversight over the FCC, said what Carr said there is dangerous as hell. That's right out of a mafioso. When it's used to silence conservatives, we will regret it. We should denounce it. So I understand now we don't live in cancel culture. It's just consequence culture.
And be aware of that. Sorry, the reason I said thank you earlier is my missus came in and gave me a cup of tea. Be aware of how cancel culture is being reframed and rephrased as consequence culture, because of course the right can't do cancel culture, but what we do is something else entirely different, and it's called consequence culture, which is you get cancelled as a consequence of your bad behaviour. So all this is giving you the correct consequences. No, yeah, but isn't that just the word cancel being removed and cancelled and instead substituted by the word consequence? Yeah, that's really what's going on. Yeah.
And you think an eye for an eye is a good solution to everything. That's what I've seen pelted at me about this. Well, you did this. That is not a way to run a free society. And you can't just trample on the First Amendment because something tragic and horrible happened.
Well said, Jessica Tarlov. Now, here we have Michael Eisner, who served as the CEO of Disney for 21 years and acquired ABC while he was in charge. He's slammed his successor, Bob Iger, for bending the knee. And the good thing about Michael Eisner is that he is indeed the owner of my local football club, the football club that I support, Portsmouth Football Club. So as an American, he came over and bought Pompey. So I like Michael Eisner. He says he's actually done a good job in managing that responsibly as well. Where has all of the leadership gone? If not for university presidents, law firm managing partners and corporate chief executives standing up against bullies, who then will step up for the First Amendment. So what he's saying is that universities have capitulated to Trump, law firms have capitulated and given pro bono work to the Trump administration for fear of retaliation, and corporate chief executives are doing the square root of naff all. So he says the suspending indefinitely of Jimmy Kimmel immediately after the chairman of FCC's aggressive yet hollow threatening of the Disney company is yet another example of out of control intimidation. Maybe the Constitution should have said, quote, Congress shall make no law abridging the freedom of speech or of the press except in one's political or financial self-interest. By the way, for the record, this ex-CEO finds Jimmy Kimmel very talented and funny. So Michael Eisner, really a stinging rebuke of the person who took over Disney from him. Now, Ted Cruz, as mentioned, has slammed the FCC chair, Brendan Carr, for threatening the media. Quote, what he said there is dangerous as hell. That's right out of a mafioso. It might feel good right now to threaten Kimmel, but when it is used to silence conservatives in America, we will regret it. And this is what you're hearing a lot of. And sometimes it's easy to say that's a really sensible thing. I'm really happy that you are slagging off the administration or Brendan Carr for saying what he said because it's against freedom of speech. But actually, sometimes, as you'll see with Ben Shapiro, when he says it, it is a little bit practical rather than moral. But anyway, here's what Ben Shapiro said.
The FCC should not be threatening action against ABC or its affiliates or Disney based on Jimmy Kimmel being a jackass. He's been a jackass his entire career. Social censure is perfectly appropriate. The blowback from the public, totally natural and in fact good, because Jimmy Kimmel is in fact a schmuck who should have been taken off the air 10 years ago. I do not want the FCC in the business of telling local affiliates that their licenses will be removed if they broadcast material that the FCC deems to be informationally false. Why? Because one day the shoe will be on the other foot.
And that's my point, is that this isn't a moral proclamation from Ben Shapiro. He's not saying they've done the wrong thing. He's saying, be warned. And this is kind of what Ted Cruz says as well. Although he's a little bit more, he's saying it's dangerous right out the mafioso. So there's a little bit more of a moral evaluation there. But he says we will regret it when it's used to silence conservatives. So both these people are really going down the route of like, okay, this is bad, but the reason it's bad is because when the Democrats get into charge, they will be doing this to us. And actually, a number of people have come out and said this, rather than saying it's outright bad for freedom of speech reasons. Now, this is Ty Cobb. He's a former White House attorney under Trump, and he's come out and given his criticisms.
Well, I think, Kristen, that it's evocative of what we've seen throughout history. I mean, in 1939, Dr. Goebbels, at Hitler's instruction, removed 5 comedians, or wittices, as they were called at the time, from the airways in Germany, and for criticizing or making fun of the government in a satire way. Putin, when he took over in the early 2000s, one of the first things he did was systematically silence critical media outlets, and independent TV channels were bought out or shut down. Trump is waging war on people who offend him. He's all about vengeance, and sadly, his subordinates, like one of the Project 2025 authors, Brandon Carr of the FCC, are following in line, and perhaps the Presidential Crimes Commission that Representative Swalwell called for recently can consider this at the end of this administration. But these people are, abandoning our constitutional rights and our constitutional freedoms. Even Senator Loomis today, by saying, she doesn't feel like enforcing the First Amendment at this point, despite having liked it when it suited her. That's a violation of her oath of office, where she takes an oath to preserve and protect the Constitution. So I think this is really tragic, and I think, as Carr said yesterday, there will be more shoes to drop. I think we can count on that. This will be 3.5 more years of vengeance.
3.5 more years of vengeance. This is vengeance in its pursuit of power. It's interesting that MSNBC, as a media channel, played a bit of the great late George Carlin, the comedian, talking about the FCC in a very prescient manner.
The FCC, an appointed body, not elected, answerable only to the president, decided on its own that radio and television were the only two parts of American life not protected by the First Amendment to the Constitution. And why did they decide that? Because they got a letter from a minister in Mississippi. A Reverend Donald Wildman in Mississippi heard something on the radio that he didn't like. Well, Reverend, did anyone ever tell you there are two knobs on the radio? But hey, Reverend, there are two knobs on the radio. One of them turns the radio off, and the other one changes the station. Imagine that, Reverend. You can actually change the station. It's called freedom of choice, and it's one of the principles this country was founded upon. Look it up in the library, Reverend, if you have any of them left when you finish burning all the books.
Turn over the channel. Well said. Andor writer Dan Gilroy. So Andor, for those who don't know, is a Disney show, because Disney hold the rights to Star Wars. As a Star Wars world show. So if you've seen Rogue One, it's the pre-story to Rogue One. Rogue One was the backstory to there were many Bothans and whatever died getting you this. It was the Star Wars, it was the Death Star plans, wasn't it? Was it Mon Mothma talking about it? Anyway, whatever. So Andor is a series that's been made that's very well regarded, that draws parallels with sort of growing fascism and whatnot in the Star Wars universe. So the writer Dan Gilroy has released a statement critiquing the Trump administration and commenting on the parallels between the show and Disney's suspension of Jimmy Kimmel. Quote, as one of the writers of the Disney Plus drama Andor, we spent 6 years thinking about a fascist takeover of the galaxy far, far away. 6 years thinking about ordinary beings as an authoritarian regime comes in for the kill. Many people saw parallels between Andor and the real world. I see them as well, particularly in the events of last week. Donald Trump's tools of governance, coercion and intimidation have found focus on Hollywood, faced with a social media firestorm, fear and an FTC head threatening, quote, they can do this easy way or the hard way. Disney suspended Jimmy Kimmel for speaking his mind. I deeply disagree, but acknowledge it was a difficult decision. If you believe otherwise, wait until fate knocks on your door and demands you choose between conscience and hardship. Because if you work in this industry, that day is coming. The suspension brought time, but not much. Bought time, but not much. Disney now stands at a crossroads. Terminate Kimmel's contract and become pavement for the road to a brave new Trumpian world, or stand for the First Amendment and take the onslaught. There's not much at stake, just free speech, the oxygen that sustains life in this town. Trump's aim is to control what we make and say. The concept seems far off and abstract. Neither is true. It is hard to conjure a new oversight office or cabinet seat. It is difficult to picture Trump toadies deplaning at LAX with binders of banned topics and mandated alternatives. You'll meet them when you have a pitch for approval or get grilled about subversive co-workers. Regardless of how the jackbooted attack on Jimmy Kimmel is resolved, this isn't a skirmish, it's a siege. The first thing Putin did after taking power was silence shows that criticize him. Artists are censored first because they fear us most. The fact this isn't new doesn't diminish the shock of the first few days. The majority of Hollywood believed their job was entertainment. The bolder souls attempted to inject theme and commentary, but for everyone, this has suddenly become Westworld real. Whether you're reading this online or at Blue Bottle or killing time before your 3 o'clock Zoom or staring at a glowing screen unable to sleep, we have all become characters in a story where our actions carry actual weight and consequence. Our industry faces the most sophisticated, venomous, creeping evil in America's history. There's no standing above this conflict, no impartial observers. If you're on the sidelines, you've made a choice and must live with it. Their goal is to instill fear, to make you feel helpless, hopeless, to break you down. Don't let them. Educate yourself, organize, speak truth to authority, because the story's not written, the pen is in your hand. And that is a call to arms, and a very well written or spoken call to arms there from the writer of Andor. So let's now go to what Trump himself has said.
And purposely, horribly, doesn't like to see a person that won the election in a landslide get 97% bad publicity before the election. I mean, it's amazing. And
now we're going to listen to a larger excerpt there of what he's saying, but essentially the defense of getting rid of Jimmy Kimmel was fired because of his poor ratings. So they're trying to sell this as a financial decision by ABC and Disney, but of course that's clearly not what happened, because it was pulled by Nexstar and then Sinclair on the basis of what he said, not on poor ratings. And now he's here, Trump indicates that no, it's not poor ratings or an insensitive response to Charlie Kirk or the citizens demanding ABC pull the show, but a government agency threatening to withhold the business license of a private company if they don't do what the government wants. Right, got it. This is an absolute, this is a watershed moment. So let's now listen to Trump in a little bit more depth here.
I just want to settle this free speech question, because you've said that you restored free speech in America.
Yeah.
Is that free speech including for people who are harshly critical of you, for your political opponents, for people who say things you don't like?
I've become immune to it.
You unfairly?
I've become immune to it. There's never been a person that's had more unfair publicity than me, and that's why your network paid me $15 million or $16 million, I believe.
So he hasn't become immune to it. He's literally contradicted himself. I haven't become immune to it. That's why there's no causal connection to those two things in a way that he's claiming or insinuating. I've become immune to it. That's why your network paid me $16 million. So he's talking about CBS. Of course, that's because Paramount wanted to merge with Skydance, and in order to do that, they needed a green light for the FCC, which is run by Brendan Carr. Brendan Carr is a Project 2025 author and Heritage Foundation guy. That is where a Trump golden head lapel pin wearing Trump acolyte, right? So to get his say so, they had to get on side with him and therefore with Trump. But Trump took them to court over the CBS frivolous lawsuit as it was, but they took them to court. They settled out of court, paid him $16 million and potentially $35 million in PSAs. And CBS is now being run by people on the right, and it is now changing completely in order to fit in line with what Trump would want. That's not him being immune. That is him literally doing the opposite. Rather than brushing it off, saying, oh, I'm immune to that, don't worry about that. It's like, I'm not immune to that, and I'm going to get you to change your ways. And the way I'm going to get you to change your ways is demand you give me money, and then you are going to change how you program CBS. So there you go. That's why CBS paid me a lot of money, he says.
To be exact, George Slopadopoulos, and that's why CBS paid me a lot of money too.
So he's not. So CBS, he's actually Carl Rowe from ABC, which is the same sort of thing. George Stephanopoulos, who stated that he was found liable for rape, and he said, no, I wasn't going to take you to court. It's actually sexual abuse and sexual assault. But of course, the judge in the case stated in his explanation of the ruling that it's functionally the same. It's just if it's done digitally by the hand rather than with your manhood, with your genitalia, we call that sexual abuse, but it is functionally rape. And the judge said that. So that would have been thrown out in court as well. And of course, ABC, owned by Disney, paid Trump $16 million. So I think it was $16 million from ABC Disney, $15 million from CBS Paramount, with another $35 million thrown on the top in the value of public service announcements. So anyway, sorry.
And that's why I sued the New York Times 2 days ago for a lot of money. Because I'm winning.
Because he's immune. That's why I did that. That's why I did that. And that's why I sued them.
I mean, I'm winning the cases. And the reason I'm winning is because you're guilty, John. You're guilty. ABC is a terrible network, a very unfair network, and you should be ashamed of yourself. NBC is equally bad. I don't know who's worse. I think they're equally bad.
He's such a pathetic, whiny man. Like, I can't wait to have this debate I'm going to be having. Like, I know he's going to be sending me text and I'll be responding in video format. But Like, I just honestly don't understand how you could put this guy up on a pedestal and think he's a wonderful human being. I would like to say that the president should be someone that you would aspire to be yourself, or that your children should aspire to be. I voted for this person because he is a decent human being wanting to better our country and our existence here in this country. And he's just a whiny, pathetic man that cakes himself in orange and fillets a microphone at a public rally, does an impression of a disabled person to demean a disabled person. Is that like, if I... Do we turn to our children and say, see that guy up there that's pretending to be a disabled person, to mock a disabled person, someone who's less fortunate himself? That's who I want you to be. I want you to be like him. But Daddy, didn't you say that that's exactly how we shouldn't act? That we should actually respect all the people, especially those who are less fortunate than ourselves? Yeah, that's what I said. But I've also voted for this guy, so you know that's really who I want you to be. Yeah. So, Daddy, do you want me to just whine all the time like some spoilt little brat as a 79, 80-year-old? Yeah, that's exactly what I want you to do. Just whine all the time.
For you to stand there and act so innocent and ask me a question like that. But look, you paid a big price because you were dishonest, John. The reason I won that lawsuit was because you were dishonest. You were proven to be dishonest. And so you can't sit back and just say, oh, well, what
You didn't win the lawsuit. They settled out of court. It's just like everything you say is a lie.
do you think, like you're some wonderful person. You're not a wonderful person. Frankly,
That's horrible. What a horrible man.
you're a terrible reporter. You know it, and so do I. Okay. Here's what we're going to do.
That's an absolutely disgraceful performance from Donald Trump there. And again, is this a person that we aspire to be, or for our children to be? Is this a person we want representing us? Well, maybe some people do. They want someone who's strong, and by strong they mean bullying and disgusting and a reprehensible human in their public social interactions.
Mr. President,
New Orleans. We have to save New Orleans.
New York. Mr. President, when are you going to get details
We're going to be
on
going
Memphis?
into New York too. Yeah.
Mr. President,
And we're
when
going to
are
be
you
going in quiet. You're really obnoxious.
I'm not obnoxious, but I'm trying to ask you, what about your plans
You are
for
really
Memphis?
obnoxious.
I'm not obnoxious, but I
Okay.
am asking, what are your
Okay.
plans for Memphis? Many people want
I'm not
know
going to talk
what
to you
the numbers are
until
gonna
I
be like.
call on you.
What are your plans for
So,
Memphis?
who
Mr.
else? Yeah, go
President?
ahead.
So again, you're obnoxious. I mean, she was, to be fair, trying to get her word in, her thoughts in edgeways there. And this is where we go to really what was going on with the decision for Jimmy Kimmel. So this is the extended clip from the one we heard a little bit from earlier.
Free speech this week. Do you see a difference between cancel culture and consequence culture?
I mean, your question's a little trick question. I'm a very strong person.
Why is that a trick question? You've seen your people saying this isn't cancel culture, this is consequence culture. Okay, what's the difference? Why is that a trick question? I hate the way he refuses to answer difficult questions. He is pathetic.
I mean, your question's a little trick question. I'm a very strong person for free speech. At the same time, when you have networks where I won an election, like in counties, I guess it's 2,600 to 525. That's called a landslide times two. When you have that level of popularity or voter support, as I did in the last election, and yet 97.
So in the last election, you proportionally across America had a 2,600 to 525 electoral victory. So you're saying, just to get this right, that across America, there were 5 times as many people that voted for you than for the Democrats. Because that is ostensibly not true. So you've just cherry-picked a number out of your ass there. And then you said 97% of newscasts are against me, and which he's going to go on to say he thinks is illegal. So it's illegal for people to criticize him, right? When he says nothing about Fox News and what Fox News has done for the last however long for the Republicans, and that Fox News is watched by more than all the other networks, so on and so forth. It's just abject nonsense.
Times two, when you have that level of popularity or voter support, as I did in the last election.
No, you didn't.
And yet.
No, you didn't. Like, objectively, factually, you didn't have that kind of support in the last election, apart from in that one place you're talking about. 97 and 94%. Different numbers. You see different numbers with different
stats, but 97, 94, 95, 96% of the people are against me in the sense of the newscasts are against me. The stories are they said 97% bad. So they gave me 97. They'll take a great
He just pulls numbers out of his backside.
story and they'll make it bad. See, I think that's really illegal, personally. You can't have a free airwaves. You're getting free airwaves from the United States government, and you can't have that and say, and somebody that just won an election, and I had to go through this during the election.
So he's saying it should be illegal that if we are providing airways for a TV station, it should be illegal for them to say things that are critical of me as the leader, because these are my airwaves. Honestly, he has just advocated for dictatorship. I can't tell you how bad things are in the US at the moment. First Amendment guarantees the right to free speech and of the press specifically without placing any limit on how much of it can be bad about a person. But of course, Trump is saying most of it's bad about me from these particular sources, but I'm going to ignore these ones where they just laud me and say how wonderful I am all the time. These ones are bad about me, and therefore it should be illegal that they exist. So as David Frum says, the president asserts that in his opinion, it's illegal for his subjects to criticize him. Unfreaking believable. Then he has his view on Antifa. But again, this is another media source that he's tried to shut down. So he's taken NPR and PBS's funding away. So national broadcasters, he's removed funding from them. And someone from NPR, because they still exist, asked him about making Antifa illegal.
Regarding Antifa, what you posted. Regarding Antifa, what you posted. NPR, sir.
Regarding Antifa and what you posted, who are you with, he asks.
Regarding
Are they still here?
we are?
Are they still here? Oh, good. Congratulations.
Regarding designating them a terrorist organization, when they don't have defined leadership or membership, how do you target them?
Yes.
Antifa.
We're going to find out, right? We're going to see. People have been talking about it for a long time. We're going to see. Did they have anything to do with your network?
What a bizarre reaction. So, okay, there are two things going on here. One, he said he's going to outlaw Antifa or go. Antifa aren't a single organization, right? It's just loose, as far as I understand it, at least. It's just a loose term for people who are anti-fascist. So, and then he says, who are you with? NPR. And she says, he then replies back to her, you're still here, won't be for long. He's telling people openly that I don't think this is like a descriptive sentence or descriptive claim about, well, I've been surveying the media landscape and I don't think you guys are going to be around too much longer because, you know, the pressure's on, blah, blah, blah. It's like, no, I've defunded you. You're not going to be around for much longer because I want to get rid of you type thing. So are you still here? You won't be for long. Does Antifa have anything to do with your network? Oh my goodness. So this is so revealing. These interactions are so revealing often with Trump, and they tell you exactly what he is thinking, and also tell you exactly what he doesn't understand. Like, he doesn't really understand about Antifa here. Now, if you're talking about freedom of speech and the control over the media, which is kind of what this is all about, this growing control over the narratives and the media in the US, Washington Post is reporting now that the Pentagon says it will require reporters, quote, to pledge they won't gather any information, even unclassified, that hasn't been expressly authorized for release, and will revoke the press credentials of those who do not obey. You cannot now do any reporting on the Pentagon or from the Pentagon unless it's been given the green light by the Pentagon. If you don't think, like, again, I'm going to go back to this chap, you know, good faith interlocutor who says, well, the big thing that Trump is better on than Kamala Harris is freedom of speech. And like, there's no reality that you can exist in where you can say that the present the United States government is better on freedom of speech than Kamala Harris was or would have been. Like, the Biden administration did not change the press corps to just invite in loads of right-wing influencers and get rid of the press so that they can't be asked difficult questions. Then when he does get asked difficult questions, say, well, which news outlet are you from? And then slag them off and not answer their questions when they're difficult, and say, and then threaten that they won't be there again. So the Australian ABC, Australian Broadcasters Corporation, the reporter asked him what might be deemed as a slightly difficult question the other day, and he was then barred. ABC were barred from going to the press conference in the UK by Trump, right? So he just won't take difficult questions, and then he sues all these different entities, these media entities, gets them on board, has as I've said, TikTok now is under his auspices to be added to the Washington Post, the Wall Street Journal, which is, his matey Murdoch, but he's actually still taking them to court. CBS, ABC, they capitulated. All of them have capitulated, or they're on side anyway, like Zuckerberg, and that's Facebook and Meta and etc., etc. So he's just gradually going through all of these outlets. Obviously, X and Elon Musk algorithmically is massively on side as well. It's a very dangerous scenario that looks pretty much like a growing autocracy for Trump here. Now, Dan Pfeiffer talking about TikTok. Lucas Tomlinson from Fox News reports that White House Press Secretary Caroline Leavitt tells us that the TikTok deal will be signed in the coming days. Here are the details. TikTok will be a majority owned by Americans in the United States. There will be 7 seats on the board that controls the app in the United States, and 6 of those seats will be Americans, and the data and privacy will be led by one of America's greatest tech companies, Oracle. The algorithm will also be controlled by America as well, Leavitt said. So, of course, the algorithm controlled by Oracle, who's the Oracle founder, Larry Ellison. Okay, these are big pro GOP people. In other words, the pro-Republican people are going to be running TikTok, which is exactly what is going on with X. So the White House confirmed, says Dan Pfeiffer, that the TikTok algorithm will now be controlled by a couple of pro-Trump billionaires. And you get comments like this from Trump.
We'll continue to talk to the Democrats, but I think you could very well end up with a closed country for a period of time. And we'll
closed country.
Take care of the military. We'll take care of Social Security. We'll take care of the things that we have to take care of. A lot of the things that Democrats fight for, which in many cases aren't very good things, will not be able to be paid. We'll continue to
talk to the Democrats, but I think you could very well be under a closed and you could very well end up with a closed country for a period of time. Wow. Okay, now he took the New York Times to court, or at least he filed a lawsuit against the New York Times for $15 billion. And I expressed this to you the other day. I showed you parts of the filing, which was absolutely insane. Honestly, an incredible document full of basically saying how wonderful Donald Trump is, what an amazing person he was, what a media legend, and blah, blah, blah. And it was just not as a 90-page document, I think, where it's predominantly how wonderful Donald Trump is as a court case. It has been thrown out, but it's been thrown out by a judge in a really dismissive way. And this is what should happen. I mean, I think Judge Stephen Merriday is a George H.W. Bush appointment, so there's no big, anti-Trump judge here. Adam Kinzinger is delighting in this decision.
Guess what? Donald Trump got his lawsuit thrown out. The New York Times one. Guys, the GOP used to be against frivolous lawsuits until Donald Trump came along, and now they're such snowflakes. Everything's offensive. Everything's so offended. Jokes are offensive. The guy who literally lies the entire time he speaks is suddenly sad that somebody lied. Whatever. Anyway, lawsuit thrown out. See ya.
That's pretty dismissive, but he's been on the wrong end of the Trump machine. Now, actually, this was thrown out in a really, I think, significant way. This is what the judge said. So a federal judge threw out Donald Trump's $15 billion lawsuit against the New York Times, calling it an undignified public relations exercise meant to, quote, rage against an adversary rather than present a well-reasoned legal case. So he said, look, I think the idea is you can resubmit your case within 28 days, but you've got to do a better job than this. This is like 98% of this is just BS pro-Trump propaganda. Why should I have to read all this to get to what your beef is, all the way down here? So he said, as every lawyer knows or is presumed to know, a complaint is not a public forum for vituperation and invective. Vituperation is like abusive language type thing, and invective, harsh language. In other words, having a go at his enemies. US District Judge Stephen Merriday, an appointee of George H.W. Bush, said of Trump's 85-page grievance-laden lawsuit, quote, a complaint is not a megaphone for public relations or a podium for a passionate oration at a political rally or the functional equivalent of the Hyde Park Speaker's Corner. There's the soapbox you get up in Hyde Park in London, and you can just shout your opinions about whatever nonsense you like to the wind, right? To anyone who might care to listen. That's not how the legal system should be used in the US. And this is what he said. It's an absolute excoriation of Trump, this. Merriday gave Trump's attorney 28 days to refile the lawsuit and ordered it to be limited to 40 pages, saying Trump must follow the rules requiring complaints to be clear and precise. He said the lawsuit, if it proceeds, must do so in, quote, a professional and dignified manner. Spokesperson for Trump's legal team, of course, they hit back, but absolutely. Merriday said that despite the modicum of expressive latitude afforded to lawyers in civil lawsuits, Trump's complaint against the Times went way over the line. It careened between allegations about the persistent election interference from legacy media, to the halcyon days of the news business, to the desperate need to defame, to defences of Trump's father, Trump's wealth, and his sprawling real estate empire. Merriday noted the complaint offered, quote, repetitive and laudatory toward President Trump, but superfluous allegations. Wow. And it's about time someone did that back to Trump. But Trump keeps saying just really, I think, dangerous things.
An unbelievable job. And I think we're getting great marks for it. People feel safe. Washington, D.C. is just the beginning. We brought the numbers down in Chicago a little bit by having the FBI in there for the last 5 months. We brought the numbers down in Memphis a little bit, but now we're going for the big one. Now we're going to go for the big one. But we set ourselves up very well in Chicago, Memphis, New Orleans a little bit, going in early just to see what was happening. We study it. We're studying the site. It's sort of like war. I mean, I hate to tell you, it's like war. Some of these people are really bad. They're really, really sick people. They're dangerous people. They're killers. They're murderers, drug dealers, and you can't have it. You can't have a country like that.
You can't have a country like that. So we're going to. He's literally saying it's like war. We're putting the military into these cities because it's like war. We're going to war on ourselves. This is a civil war that people have been talking about, and of course, people like Tim Pool famously saying it all the time. In fact, Adam Kinzinger, the former Republican, saying that on his feed today, just gave a picture of all of the times that Tim Pool, this right-wing influencer, has claimed that the US is devolving into civil war. It's civil war. They want this to be a civil war thing. And then Trump gets in charge, and then this is the civil war they're talking about. It didn't come from the left. It didn't come from Biden and Kamala Harris. No, it's coming now, and the civil war is involving the president sending military into cities in the US. But this assault on freedom of speech is no more evidenced, I think, than this hot mic incident of Trump on the airplane.
Look, that's something that should be talked about for licensing too. When you have a network and you have evening shows and all they do is hit Trump, that's all they do. If you go back, I guess they haven't had a conservative on in years or something, somebody said. But when you go back and take a look, all they do is hit Trump. They're licensed. They're not allowed to do that. They're an arm of the Democrat Party. Thank you, everybody.
So he says they're not allowed to do that. Again, he said illegal earlier. They're not allowed to do that They're not allowed to criticize me on TV. They're an arm of the Democrat Party without recognizing that Fox News is obviously a state propaganda news outlet, scarequote news outlet, state propaganda outlet. That is the arm of the Republican Party, but he's fine with that. But when comedians take the mickey out of him, it's not allowed. So then ICE are going in and they are being really heavy-handed. So here is a woman protesting outside Broadview ICE facility, is shot repeatedly with sting balls, thrown to the ground and ultimately maced point blank in the face as she attempts to block ICE agents from leaving the facility in a vehicle.
Oh my God. That was really cool, guys. You guys are super cool for that. Wow. Big tough man. Thank you. Big tough guys. She's getting her sign. She's getting her sign. Go get it for her. You'll get it for her. Give me your sign. Give me your sign. Fall down.
Literally, so the guy next to her just sprays pepper spray in her face
Go get it for her. You'll get it for her. Give me your sign. Give me your sign.
while being shot.
Fall down. You're gonna need some shit. They already got me earlier. You have to. It's gonna get worse. It's gonna get worse. We're not threatening anyone. We're not threatening anyone. Move out! Move out! Move out! How is she supposed to move?
Get the thing!
Let's go! Move out! Right there, that's good.
So on and so forth. And I just, it's all, you know, this wasn't happening 10 months ago. This wasn't happening a year ago. Like, is this really what you want the country to devolve to? Now, here we have a Democratic candidate called Kat Abu-Ghazaleh, who was thrown to the ground by ICE in a very unsavory fashion. Let's just see this. Okay, now make of that what you will, but actually it's not that I have the biggest issue with. It is this. So when you're talking about these liberal comedians and the TV channels that they are hosted by being an arm of the Democrat Party, this is Laura Ingraham on Fox News reporting on that incident.
Including a Democrat congressional candidate who was thrown to the ground by an ICE agent. Good work.
I said to my sister, and her husband came and visited today with my partner, and I was talking about this and saying, imagine watching the BBC and having that happen to, I don't know, a Conservative councillor or something, and the BBC news anchor saw the Conservative councillor being thrown to the ground, and this is a Labour government, and you've got the police, and the police throw her to the ground. Imagine the BBC news anchor reports that, and then says, good work. Good work. Good work seeing that done. I like to see that. Good work. You tell me this isn't a propaganda arm of the Republican Party. It's absolutely despicable.
Including a Democrat congressional candidate who was thrown to the ground by an ICE agent. Good work. ICE agent. Good work. Agent. Good work. Agent. Good work.
Absolutely incredible. And then the woman that was thrown to the ground said, "That's me in the video, and the Fox News host just celebrated me being assaulted by ICE. If ICE will do this to a congressional candidate with a big platform, just imagine what they're doing to people they're kidnapping." Mehdi Hassan says, "This is not a fireable... How is this not a fireable offence?" from Laura Ingraham. So Jimmy Kimmel gets cancelled. Brian Kilmeade advocates for the forced euthanization of the forced murder of certain homeless people. And he still reports happily on Fox News. Laura Ingraham says, "Good work to this person getting thrown to the ground." She's explicitly celebrating and endorsing and encouraging violence against Democratic congressional candidates. It's just outrageous, isn't it? Outrageous. And then we look at ICE, so run by Tom Homan. So NBC is reporting the FBI caught Tom Homan accepting bribes in exchange for steering government contracts, but Trump shut the investigation down. It's an absolutely incredible story, not least because it shows outright corruption. But this has been dismissed by people like Megyn Kelly on the right, saying, who cares what he's done? What would you say that if a Democrat had done this? So undercover FBI agents posing as contractors communicated and met several times last summer, this is before the new administration, with a business colleague who introduced them to Homan, and with Homan himself, who indicated he would facilitate securing contracts for them in exchange for money once he was in office, according to documents and the people familiar with the case. On September the 20th, 2024, with hidden cameras recording the scene at the meeting spot in Texas, Homan accepted $50,000 in bills, according to an internal summary of the case and sources. FBI agents and Justice Department prosecutors took no further investigative steps in the final months of 2024, the people said, and expected to keep monitoring Homan to determine if he landed an official role and would make good on steering contracts in the future Trump administration. So in other words, your man here has committed a corrupt offence. And because it happened at the end of the last administration, the investigation that took over, towards the end of last year, when you've got your lame duck period going into the new administration, they said, "Oh, we're going to keep an eye on this and see, and then we'll prosecute or whatever thereafter." And then, of course, Trump gets in and like, "Oh no, we're going to drop that. That's not something that we're going to look into." Megyn Kelly says, "We do not care. Don't bother Tom Homan. He's a national treasure." So you don't care now about a $50,000 in bills corruption scandal. You don't care. You don't care about government officials engaging in bribery. You can't have good faith discussions or debates with people who are like this. It's simply disgraceful. It's un-American, says Midas Touch. The Republican Party has become a lawless extremist cult. Never has been more clear than right now. Never has been clearer than right now. Now, there's an interesting article by Carol Leonnig and Ken Delanian where they discuss this. It's unclear what reasons FBI and Justice Department officials gave for shutting down the investigation, but a Trump Justice Department appointee called the case a deep state probe in early 2025, and no further investigative steps were taken, the sources say. What a surprise. Tom Homan takes over ICE, and the DOJ, run by all complete Trump yes people, then shut down any investigation into the corruption of the person that's in charge of ICE. Federal investigation was launched in Western Texas in the summer of 2024 after a subject in a separate investigation claimed Homan was soliciting payments in exchange for awarding contracts should Trump win the presidential election. According to an internal Justice Department summary of the probe reviewed by MSNBC and people familiar with the case, the U.S. Attorney's Office in the Western District of Texas, working with the FBI, asked the Justice Department's Public Integrity Section to join its ongoing probe, quote, into the border czar and former acting Director of Immigration and Customs Enforcement, Tom Homan, and others based on evidence of payment from FBI undercover agents in exchange for facilitating future contracts related to border enforcement. So these were undercover FBI agents as well. I mean, this isn't like somebody saying a hearsay from someone else, "Oh, I heard that he's taken this money." It's literally involving undercover FBI agents. And then it's all shut down. So this is the latest scandal, and it's just absolutely incredible. Now, a couple of other things to add to here, like nuggets to continue with. I know this has been long enough as it is. I just want to play you this of Secretary of Commerce Howard Lutnick. Now, this is concerning the change to H-1B visas going now to be costing an awful lot more. than they previously did. In other words, they want to stop employing people from abroad. Now, you'd think this would upset people like Elon Musk. We'll come on to that in a second because he's very dependent on them for his businesses. But anyway, they are going to make it now a $100,000 fee for an H-1B visa.
I think, Sean, do you agree with that?
Well, they're $100,000 per year. So the whole idea...
Did you hear how much he emphasized per year?
Dollars per year. So the whole idea is no more will these big tech companies or other big companies train foreign workers. They have to pay the government $100,000, then they have to pay the employee. So it's just not economic. If you're going to train somebody, you're going to train one of the recent graduates from one of the great universities across our land. Train Americans, stop bringing in people to take our jobs. That's the policy here, $100,000 a year for H-1B visas, and all of the big companies are on board. We've spoken to them about the gold card.
They love it. They love it.
Renewals, first times. The company needs to decide, is that person valuable enough to have $100,000 a year payment to the government?
So on and so forth. So he says 5 times in a row, $100,000 a year is going to cost the company to employ and train up someone from abroad. And so first of all, guess who hasn't said a word? The reason I'm in America, along with so many critical people who built SpaceX, Tesla, and hundreds of other companies that made America strong, is because of H-1B. So remember when Elon Musk had this spat with Trump and it was over the visas? They were going to get rid of these H-1B visas. And then Elon Musk said, well, that's going to ruin my company. And then he said this: take a big step back and F yourself in the face. I will go to war on this issue, the likes of which you cannot possibly comprehend. He said, you get rid of the H-1B visas and I will go to war with you. They're now making them cost $100,000 for companies per year, and we're going to come back to that in a second. And yet Elon Musk doesn't say anything. Well, if you look at the small print, I wonder why. Oh, it's a bribery scheme. Critical part to the president's new $100,000 charge for H-1B visas. The administration can also offer a $100,000 discount to any person, company or industry that it wants, replacing rules with arbitrary discretion. So Elon Musk, you're a mate of ours, you don't have to pay that. This is corruption where the government gets to decide. There's no flat rule, there's no rationale other than the government gets to decide who has to pay that and who doesn't. And if you are a donor to the Republican Party, you don't have to pay that. This is freaking corruption. Like, the government is insane. Like, how you can sit there and defend Donald Trump blows my freaking mind every time. Want visas? You know who to call and who to flatter. And then it turns out that Howard Lutnick wasn't even right. This is his thing. He's a Secretary of Commerce. Caroline Leavitt literally had to come out afterwards and say, to be clear, Caroline Leavitt, these are her words, this is her tweet. To be clear, 1, this is not an annual fee. What are you doing? Being the Secretary of Commerce, this is your policy, coming out and not understanding your own policy that you're getting your president to sign in front of the cameras and repeating 5 times in a row that this is an annual fee. That's $100,000 a year. A company has to pay for this person to be employed from abroad. And you can't even get that right. What a clown show. Caroline Leavitt comes out and says, to be clear, 1, this is not an annual fee. It's a one-time fee that applies only to the petition. 2, those who already hold H-1B visas and are currently outside of the country right now will not be charged $100,000 to re-enter. H-1B visas can leave and re-enter the country to the same extent as they normally would, whatever ability they have to do this. That is not impacted by yesterday's proclamation. 3, this applies only to new visas, not renewals, and not current visa holders. It will apply to the next upcoming lottery cycle. But the fact that Howard Lutnick doesn't know that, and that's like one of the main things. It's like, is it $100,000 or are you paying $100,000 a year? So if I'm a company and I'm listening to Howard Lutnick, I'm like, gee whiz. So if I employ someone for 10 years, that's $1 million I'm paying to employ that guy for 10 years. And Caroline Leavitt comes out and says, he doesn't know what he's talking about. It's $100,000. That's it. Okay, that's quite a big difference there. These guys are freaking clueless. The lot of them. Now, I could go into detail about this, but basically it's all to do with filibusters and being able to stop a government from being able to railroad nominees into positions like they're doing here. And essentially you were able to stop that from happening by sort of filibustering or you know, as an opposition party saying, no, we're going to challenge this one, we're going to challenge that one. So because that was an issue for the Republicans getting through, it's been the same for any party in charge, to be honest, over time. Trying to get through your nominations when the other party's trying to stop it happening is now going to not be an issue because the Republicans have just changed the rules. So they've just changed the rules and then said it only needs to be a majority vote. So as long as we get 51, then we can put through whoever we like. And they've just put 48 people through just like that. Not the top level. You have to say if you're the Secretary of Homeland Security or whatever, Department of Homeland Security or Secretary of Human and Health Services, then you still go through the old school process. But lower down nominations, now you can argue that makes it more efficient, but here, like, the government just gets to say, oh, here's 48 people, they're all going to go in all these positions. And of course, you put in your particular ideological lackeys down here, and it doesn't matter what the opposition say. You know, if you've got control of the House, if you've got control of the Senate, then there you go. 48, just like that. Super worrying, but again, it's concentration of power in the Republican Party, which is super worrying. Now, last thing I'm going to say is watch out for farmers at the moment. This isn't really to do with freedom of speech, but you're going to see a lot of people that are getting hit in the pocket, and farming is going to happen. So, yeah, how does one stop all of this other stuff from happening? It turns out that, yeah, you'll get people complaining in Hollywood and complaining in certain areas. But the Trump supporters don't care about that because they're Trump supporters, right? And so they are people who essentially will agree with anything that Trump says, irrespective of whether they are sitting down and think about it and working out whether actually it's a good thing, all things considered. A bit like, say, Ben Shapiro saying, oh, actually, this could come back and bite us on the arse. For most average people, they're going to be like, I really love Trump and I really love all these ideas. And if we get to ram through all of this ideology without democracy, and if Trump gets to control the entirety of the media landscape, well, that's my ideology, be it controlling the entirety of the media landscape. In other words, it seems to be the case that I hate dictatorship when my guy's not in charge, but when my guy's in charge, dictatorship's fine because he's my guy. I don't mind my guy being the dictator and holding on to power forever. It's just that when my guy's not in charge, this thing is the worst thing ever. Oh my God, dictatorship. Oh my God, I love freedom. America's the land of the free. It's the land of the free until my dictator gets in charge. Then land of the free, land of the shmee. Don't really care. My guy's in charge. So the only way you change that, unfortunately, is you hurt people in the pocket. People have to hurt financially, it appears. And lots of analysts are saying this at the moment. That the only time real diehard Trump supporters are coming out and questioning Donald Trump big time is when his activities are causing them to lose money. And that is happening no more obviously than in the farming sector. And listen to, in a farming community, this much kind of applause for what he says, which is deeply anti-Trump, coming from other farming members of the farming community here in this audience. So you might have an issue for Trump if the economy is hit hard. And when you've got H-1B visas, yeah, issues like that, when you've got arresting 300 odd South Koreans at a Hyundai plant, when you've got a tariff war with everyone, then actually there's every chance that the economy might take a bit of a hit.
I think agriculture has taken a heck of a hit on a lot of misinformation, and he is not helping the farmers.
Trump is not helping the farmers.
I mean, we farm about 3,500 acres. We are going to be so far in the red after the crop comes off, sold. You can only sit on it so long. You got bills to pay, and now we're dealing with 7, 8, 9, 10% operating notes at the local bank. You know, when are you going to stand up for us instead of kissing his ass for these trade deals? And the tariffs, more so the tariffs than the trade.
So you had a concert. I was watching CNN yesterday, and they were talking about Bob Dylan and Willie Nelson, and who else was it? Can't remember. And a third one, Dave Matthews, was doing a concert to raise money for farmers. It's like, so you're having to raise money for farming communities because they're being hit by Trump's tariffs. You've got these concerts taking place to try and sustain farming communities because you've been absolutely minced by Trump's tariffs. Like, I hope you realise, the farming communities, who is doing this to you, and I hope you come out and change your vote and kick up a fuss like your man is doing here and attributing the blame correctly to Trump and his administration. It's super important that happens in order to enact change, affect change. Yeah. So anyway, there is such an assault on freedom of speech. Now, I'm not going to show you this stuff. I said I'll show you some of it. I've gone on too long. Go and check out the behavioral arts. It'll be linked below. Court footage of Charlie Kirk's assassin doesn't add up. So that's interesting. And Tyler Robinson, body language exposed. And then the talk about the text chain between him and his roommate is also seen as completely nonsensical. It's at least somewhat doctored. And I think the evidence there is pretty compelling, really interesting. Anyway, but for the time being, be really aware that there is a massive attack on the US freedom of speech at the moment, and it is a war zone in the media landscape. Take care and speak to you soon.